The Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed treason charges against End Bad Governance protesters following a directive from the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Olasunkanmi Fagbemi, on behalf of the federal government. Justice Obiora Egwuatu struck down the charges after the Attorney General, represented by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Adebola, invoked Section 174 of the 1999 Constitution to take over and discontinue the case initiated by the Inspector General of Police. In a swift decision with no objections from defense lawyers, Justice Egwuatu granted the AGF's request, ordering the immediate release of 150 individuals who had been held in custody. The decision comes after President Bola Tinubu on Monday instructed the Attorney General to end the prosecution, noting that most of the accused are minors who by law cannot face such charges. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, Obiora Egwuatu, said he has summoned senior officers, including all DCs, CID, and the heads of investigation units, over the welfare of younger protesters identified to be minors while they were in police detention. This comes following a nationwide outrage over the arraignment of the minors at the Federal High Court on Friday. The protesters, who were charged with treason, looked malnourished when they appeared in court 3 months after they were arrested during the August hunger protest. However, a statement released by the Force Public Relations Officer, Olumoyewa Adedugba, in Abuja on Monday night said Egwuatu had ordered a thorough investigation into how the minors were treated. The recent adjournment of a court case involving suspect from the End Bad Governance protest has led to an outcry from families. Now the suspects face charges related to displaying a Russian national flag and allegedly creating online groups advocating for armed resistance. Our correspondent, Umaru Kirawa, has details.
1st to 10th of August 2024, across Nigerian cities, witnessed demonstration by some citizens. A movement that began peacefully, calling on authorities to readjust and end hunger, bad governance, later turned violent. Some persons were arrested by the authorities. After about 3 months in custody, these suspects are being arraigned on the basis of forming social media groups to take arms against the government. Others are accused of carrying and displaying a Russian national flag during the demonstration, which has raised concerns.
By doing the accelerated hearing, the case can be faster and then can be speed, and then the judgment has been delivered within a short period of time. That's why we are applying for the accelerated hearing in this case.
Family members are also pleading for a swift resolution, arguing that prolonged detention is unjust.
Muna kira da gwamnati ya tausaya mana ya yi mana taimako, muna roƙon shi. Yaran nan suna cikin wani hali ne da kowa ba su san halin da suke ciki ba. Yanzu haka iyayen daya mu ya rasu, bai san iyayen shi ya rasu ba. Daya matar shi ta kai shi lebo, matar ta rasu da yaron shi ba sani ba. Nan gaban Allah ya kaddara aka bar shi tukun za san wannan abin.
In ma za su koyi darasi yanzu sun koya. Mu a matsayin mu na iyaye, ko? A dalilin abin da suka je suka shiga shiki, ladabin da za su koya daga shiki dalilin wannan zaman kunshi da suka yi na watanni 3, ka gane ko ya ishe su.
Yau watansa 3 a hannun hukuma, mun yi police da kansu sun je sun ajiye sun yi bincike me kai duk an tambaya shi ba a same shi da koya, amma suka ce su ajiye aka ba su da daman su sake shi.
11 of the protesters are accused of carrying and displaying Russian national flags, while 7 are said to have formed social media groups called Zanga Zanga Group to take arms against the government. All the 18 suspects have been taken to remand homes as the hearing has been adjourned to the 18th of November 2024 at the Borno State High Court 10. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Let's tell you now that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has arrested former governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, for the alleged diversion of 1.3 trillion naira and 13% derivation funds from the Federation account between 2015 and 2023. Okowa was taken into custody on November 4, 2024 in Port Harcourt, River State, after reporting to the Port Harcourt Directorate of the EFCC at the invitation of investigators handling his case. The former governor is accused of failing to account for the funds, along with additional 40 billion naira reportedly used to acquire shares in UTM floating liquefied natural gas. Okowa allegedly invested 40 billion naira in shares within one of the country's major banks, representing 8% equity stake to facilitate the offshore LNG project. The funds are suspected to have been redirected for other purposes. When I head to the U.S. for our continued coverage of the 2024 U.S. election, voters in the U.S. Hamlet of Dixville notched launch election day in the first minutes of Tuesday with a tied vote, mirroring the incredibly close national polls in the White House race. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump each got 3 ballots in the tiny community in the northeastern state of New Hampshire, which for decades has kicked off election day at the stroke of midnight Monday, and hours before the rest of the country's polling stations open. Democratic Vice President, Republican ex-Vice President have been battling in a tense and exceptionally close race, with opinion polls largely tied. So a gathered crowd of journalists, the vote opened with a rendition of the U.S. national anthem performed on an accordion. In the meantime, polling stations have opened in the highly anticipated U.S. presidential election, with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump neck and neck in the polls. The historic election could make Harris the first female president, while a Trump win would mark a remarkable comeback. The outcome is far from certain, with millions of voters expected to cast their ballots today. The result may take several days to finalize, adding to the tension in this deeply divided nation. The world watches anxiously, knowing the outcome will have far-reaching implications for global conflicts, climate change, and more. And for more on this, we're joined by 2 gentlemen, Mukesh Kapila, author and global health humanitarian human rights development, as well as Temsankwa Zoe, international media and political risk consultant. Gentlemen, glad to have you both join me on the news.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be there.
Okay, let me start with Zoe. We understand from the first ballot cast, Trump as well as Harry are neck and neck in polls. I mean, what could be the reason for this?
Well, one of the reasons is that there's always a margin of error. When you look at how all these different groups or pollsters, as you call them, collect their data. The other reason could be there are some people or communities that react or respond differently. So if you are part of a sample, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to say how you are going to vote. So there's always that margin of error. In reality, what we do as journalists, probably when we analyze this kind of data, is to be able to say the result or the outcome is uncertain. It could swing probably one way. You could have probably former President Trump winning by a wide margin, or you could have Vice President Harris winning by a wide margin too. It is just an indication that it is too tough to call. There are too many variables within the margin of error, but these swing states, as we call them, could go either way. But there are also different ways or paths, what is called paths to the 270. It is always more difficult for the Democrats to get there than it is for the Republican because of the number of states that and maybe votes that are not being contested in real terms in what we call safe seats.
Well, Zoe, let me just hold your thoughts now. Let me find out, from our other guests regarding what he thinks about polls so far being neck and neck for Donald Trump as well as Kamala Harris.
Well, I think it reflects the fragmented nature of the United States. In fact, the word United States is a bit of a misnomer, in that the states are by no means united. And this so-called national election is really a set of local elections and local issues, which are obviously different in different states and for people of different demographics. So what we have is a lot of local elections going on, which are coming together as a so-called national presidential election. And I think it reflects the division and polarity and diversity of the United States.
Let me come to you, Zoe. Looking at, the New York Post endorsements of Trump, do you think that can influence voter behavior?
It is difficult to say. These are probably, this is one of those rare elections in the U.S. when you talk about the federal elections. But also just to acknowledge the other speaker, in that, when you get this ballot paper in the U.S., it's a very long one. It might take maybe even up to 10 minutes to fill it in. It is not just the presidential election or the candidates that you have to look at. It's all other set of elections that you are having to consider. So in a way, former President Trump was in power. People do remember how it was, how life was under him, relations with international, partners and enemies, but also how the economy was, how he handled COVID and all that. And also under the Democrats, under President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, people are also, having the privilege of having to compare whether what life is now is what they want to continue, or they might want to go back. So, it is very, very difficult to say how the different groups will react, or respond. If you are coming from the ethnic minority, communities, how do you respond to the issues of immigration? If you are youths or if you are women, but there is some evidence that there are a lot of women who are voting for Kamala Harris on issues of, the right to decide what should happen with their own bodies. But also there are other people on the economy who say that former President Trump used to run a better economy from a policy point of view than what's happening now. Dashi?
Connect with Afia. Gentlemen, will come to you in a moment. Afia, bring us up to speed. What's happening where you are? What's been the turnout so far?
Well, I'm at this polling station in the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library in downtown Washington, D.C. And as you can see behind me, it is very busy. Lots of people turning out to vote. And it's only 9:15 here in Washington, D.C. Already a very, very busy scene. I'm going to take you around the polling station. As you can see, you have these voting booths at the back here. You can also see there's lots of press as well that are here to observe the election process. And around here is where you have the voting booths where people will write their ballot. On here you have your instructions for voting. You have notice of any candidate withdrawals here. All your instructions here are for voting. And yes, as you can see behind me, it is extremely busy. We have a queue that almost goes out of the door here, and this queue actually has only built up since we have been here. When we arrived here maybe about 15 minutes ago, the queue was not that long. So I think as the day progresses, you see the queue is going right around this main hall in the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library here in downtown Washington, D.C. It is certainly a very, very, very busy scene this morning. Now, polls opened at 7 a.m. and they will close at 8 p.m. this evening. If you are in the queue to vote whilst polls close, you can still vote. So yeah, a very busy scene.
Afia, just describe the mood you sense from the people there. Describe to us the demography of the people there, who have come to cast their votes.
Well, it is a very, very mixed scene, actually. Now, Washington, D.C. is 44% black people, but at the moment, as you can see from the queue behind me, it is a very mixed scene. Lots of women, lots of men, lots of people of a different demographic coming in to vote. And when we got here as well, there was lots of people dropping their mail-in ballots as well. You can still do mail-in ballots. There was a box for that outside, so people doing that also. But as you can see, a really, really mixed scene. Lots of different people coming here to vote and making sure that their vote counts, making sure that they can cast their ballots in a peaceful way. And it's a very peaceful scene. It's quite a sort of a festival scene. You've got election workers outside who are really, really super helpful for everyone here. And I think everyone here is quite relaxed. But like you said, in terms of demographics, it's a very mixed scene at the moment.
Well, how would you describe what you have sensed so far? Do you sense voter apathy? What are people saying behind the scene regarding who should emerge as the winner of this election?
Well, this is the thing, because you have so many polls beforehand, that can affect how people feel about voting. They may feel that, well, okay, my vote doesn't count if it's already been decided. But because the polls are so tight, I think that people are really feeling that, yes, actually, my vote can make a difference. Like I said, when we got here, maybe about 30 minutes ago, this queue wasn't here at all. And I think this queue is a real testament to the fact that actually people feel that, you know what, we are going to go and cast our vote. This is probably the most consequential election that the US has had in modern history. It's the tightest race since the year 2000 as well. And I think that that is really reflected in the amount of people that you are seeing turning out to vote. Like I said, people are very relaxed. People seem very happy, very calm in the queue. Washington, D.C. was a city yesterday that seemed to be battening down the hatches somewhat. But today, it actually feels much more relaxed than it did yesterday. Like I said, a huge line of people, I'm surprised by it, that have come out to vote that weren't here 30 minutes ago. So I think this particular polling station, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, is going to be a very busy scene all day today.
I feel like this, let's hear from the horse's mouth. If possible, can we speak to one or two persons right there about how they feel about election day today?
Okay, now the rules are that you cannot speak to anybody who is queuing up to vote inside the polling station. They have very clear rules about that. So once they're outside, we can speak to them, but once they're in the queue inside the polling station, we're not allowed to speak to them. But later on, we will speak to people who are exiting, who have the I have voted stickers, to get their opinions and to get their feelings on how they feel about voting on election day.
Well, before I let you go, Afia, by way of just comparing back home here in Nigeria, when we have elections, I want to find out what's the presence of security officers like right there as people queue up to cast their votes.
And that's a really good question. So when we came in earlier on, there was the presence of police outside, but they were more there just to kind of oversee. They weren't really interacting with anybody. It was about 6 police officers, but they're just sort of there to keep the peace while we're in the polling station. There's a lot of polling officials just here to sort of help people to vote, point them in the right direction. So there is a security presence. It's not too heavy, but like I said, there is quite a relaxed atmosphere. But we are in downtown Washington, D.C. here, somewhere in the capital that is quite protected. But yes, some police presence outside, some security officials and voting officials inside the polling station as well. Not too heavy a security presence, and like I said, it is quite relaxed in the atmosphere.
Afia, thank you, but please still stay with us. We'll come to you in just a moment. Let's, speak to our guest further regarding how things are taking shape as regards to the U.S. election. Let me come to you, Mukesh. We've seen, polls so far where Trump and Harry are neck to neck. What demographic factors should be examined, for instance, in this poll result to help us understand, level of support for either Trump or Harris?
I think from what we can gather from the numerous polls that have taken place is that there is a divide, and there is a gender divide. It seems that more women are voting for Kamala Harris, and it seems that the traditional black vote for the Democrats is being eroded by Trump. It seems that Trump possibly has an edge in relation to working class votes. And it seems that he has more of an edge in the deindustrialized or the rural areas. And so there is a clear difference in terms of class, economic status, and gender in terms of the tendency of the voters around the United States. And the question then is, how do these numbers add up in relation to the collective in the individual states, which will then decide how the electoral college votes are allocated.
Mukesh, just, hold your thoughts, please. Let me get back to our correspondents bringing us, up-to-date, feed regarding how this, election is turning out. Afia, how soon, as we wait with bated breath, people want to know how soon should results, be rolled out?
And that is the question, pardon me, that is the question on everybody's lips, isn't it? How soon should we expect to see a result? Polls close around 8 p.m. this evening. And after that, that's when the count begins. And we just don't have any idea of when we will get these results. It could be into Wednesday morning. It could be into Wednesday evening. Now, the factors that affect that are your mail-in ballots. In 2020, there was a lot more mail-in ballots because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that meant lots of people mailed in their votes rather than coming to stand in line. We've have had a lot of early voting as well, about 80 million early votes cast already. So we're anticipating potentially we might have a result tomorrow morning. But let's also remember, because the figures and the numbers have been so tight, you might have some states and some places where they are going to have to do recounts. And of course, recounts take time. So from sources I have spoken to over the past couple of days, we are anticipating that we will get a result Wednesday into Thursday. But like I said, this is an election that has had a raft of surprises all throughout. Nothing has been predictable whatsoever. So I'm saying it could be Wednesday into Thursday, but let's see what happens over the next 24 to 48 hours.
And of course, we'll keep in touch with you, Afia Hagen, our Chief International Correspondent. Afia, many thanks indeed for your detailed coverage. Let me return to you, Mukesh. We have seen, unique time of voting in places like Dixville Notch at midnight. Do you think this early voting would influence or impact voter turnout as well as engagement?
It's good if the voter turnout is good, because these being highly consequential elections for the whole world, not just America, every vote counts. But with so many tens of millions of votes already cast, as your correspondent was saying, I think what happens today is only one part of the overall story in terms of the expression of the will of the American people. And that's why I think this is a fascinating case where it's difficult to judge which way we are going to turn. Because many people have already cast their votes, even while the two candidates were going along with their hustings. It's clear, without listening to either of the candidates, they'd already made up their minds at a very early stage. And this is how people make up their minds. They don't necessarily listen to the candidates. They decide based on their own experiences, their own emotions, their own backgrounds, their own whatever they're feeling. And this is one of the aspects of democracies which I think researchers find very difficult. How do people make up their minds? Why do they make up their minds in a particular way? And in America, you have all the contradiction paradoxes that you would expect in any democracy, all coming together in even greater numbers.
How about you, Zoe? Your final thoughts regarding whoever emerges the winner of this election?
So whoever emerges have to deal with the wars that are going on in the Middle East and in Ukraine. Whoever emerges has to contend with the domination of China in the global marketplace. Whoever emerges has to have a policy towards Africa, which is predominantly beginning to say, well, they want to hold on to their resources and have a fair share. Whoever emerges has to unite America. But it is going to be very, very difficult because it appears that within the last few years, the Democrats and the Republicans have been further and further away from each other. And it also then depends on the credibility of the various election officials in the different states, if there are challenges, if there are legal processes that have to be undertaken to ascertain the results. It's going to be very, very difficult to show that leadership between now and the 20th of January.
Well, thank you so much, Thamsakwa Zoe, international media and political risk consultant, as well as Mukesh Kapila, author and global health, humanitarian, human rights development. Many thanks indeed, gentlemen.
Thank you.
After the break, advocates push for safety measures for children in Plateau State. Details shortly. Thank you for staying tuned. The Nigerian Shippers Council, NSC, is pressing for the swift passage of the Nigerian Port Economic Regulatory Agency bill to boost Nigeria's standing in the African Continental Free Trade Area and strengthen its economy. The bill, which has passed the House of Representatives and is awaiting Senate concurrence, is designed to fortify Nigeria's maritime sector through comprehensive regulatory reforms. Our correspondent for maritime, Obiora Egwuatu, has details.
Speaking in his capacity as the Executive Secretary and CEO of the Nigerian Shippers Council after 1 year in office, Pius Akuta emphasized the urgency of positioning Nigeria to capitalize on Africa's continental free trade area's potential, which opens a $4 trillion market to 1.5 billion people across the continent. The highlights were the Nigerian Port Economic Regulatory Agency Bill, which he described as one noble objective needed to bring about the efficiency of the sector.
The movement of cargo is very crucial. If we cannot move our cargo from the seaport to the hinterlands, then at the end of the day, we are not able to achieve what we intend to achieve with the volume of trade that is coming in.
The shipping subsector of the economy is crucial as the Nigerian ports are dependent on the arrival of ships. Partnership with shipping companies becomes imperative for trade and economic growth. Connectivity within the African regions remains a major challenge as goods often have to route through Europe before reaching other African destinations, which increases both time and cost.
For instance, a ship leaving Shanghai port in China coming to Nigeria takes about 28 days to get into Nigeria. It takes about 34 days to get to Tema port. But the cost of coming to Nigeria is about $3,150, whereas that of Tema port is $2,150, a difference of $1,000. And this is being attributable to the cost of assurance. Now we are saying that why should you give us a cost of assurance of that much when you're talking about insecurity issues? But we are using the same channel to come into Nigeria and the same channel to go, the same body of waters to go into Tema. So we have had discussions with the DG of NIMASA to look at how we can deal with this issue of war zone, in terms of the additional cost to freight.
The industry awaits Nigerian Shippers Council action plan going forward, which includes positioning Nigeria as a maritime logistics hub for Africa. Stakeholders also look forward to the outcome of the bill, concession agreements, collaborations on inland dry port, vehicle transit areas, and the repeal of the Shippers Council 1978 Obsolete Act, amongst many other reforms. In Lagos, for News Central, Norma Obiaswalo.
Let's also tell you that the 7th Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit is underway in Abuja. The summit will establish a platform where diaspora investors can interact with potential sponsors, partners, and business owners looking for investors, collaborators, and government officials. They will have direct roundtable deals for mutual benefit. The summit aims to bring together diaspora investors and people seeking investment opportunities in Nigeria. Business owners will also have the opportunity to showcase their business proposals to potential investors and government agents. And to talk about this, we have joined us, right from there, our correspondent, Perpetua Fagbemi Peter. Perpetua, bring us up to speed so far. What's the summary of today's event so far?
Thank you so much for that. Well, it's the 7th Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit, and just like you rightly said, it's all about letting diaspora Nigerians know the available opportunities in country where they can invest in. And of course, looking at that, this is the 7th one, and the theme for this year is adapting stability through diaspora investment, navigating the path to prosperity. So far, we've had several speeches. We had a goodwill message from the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was ably represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. And for him, he talked about available, sectors where diasporans can actually invest in. He talked about the oil and gas sector. He talked about so many other sectors. And one thing that was really important that he talked about was the fact that the government realizes and also understands that security is a challenge. And he also said that the government has been doing a whole lot in that regard to ensure that security is worked on and security, is made to be better in Nigeria so people can willingly and freely come down to invest in the country. Apart from that, some other sectors were also highlighted as sectors that will be needing investment, talking about agriculture, talking about healthcare, talking about fintech, and we've had several pitches. We have Nigerians here who have businesses in Nigeria who are pitching their businesses also to these diasporans, letting them know that there are businesses where they can invest in, telling us what the books look like and what they want. And we've also had very interesting questions from these diasporans in return who are saying, okay, yes, I would like to invest in your business, but I need you to answer this, and that question. And of course, I want to believe some deals are being signed right now, even as we speak. And apart from that, it's also interesting to know that there are diasporans who are also looking at not just investing in some of those businesses, but also having their own businesses. I mean, when we talk about diasporans, we're looking not just at diaspora remittances. That's a good one. Nigeria makes a huge amount of money from that. Though we're also looking at foreign direct investments. We're looking at, knowledge transfer. These are some of the things we're looking at, and I want to believe that this is a good platform for that to happen. But of course, I have right here with me a diasporan who already has a business in Nigeria, and so it's in the healthcare sector. His name is Dr. Joseph Olowe. Dr. Joseph Olowe, please come.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. So tell me, I mean, many people would want to know, why would you live where you are and then think of coming to Nigeria to invest?
Well, when you look at Nigeria, Nigeria is a place to be. Looking at 220 million people that can buy your services. So that's a motivation to come in. And the area we are trying to solve problem in is what is needed the most, which is healthcare. And we're trying to kind of move away from when people get sick to seek preventive care. And we believe that it's what Nigeria needs, looking at our infrastructure in health, which is nothing. Driving preventive care is the best way to go.
All right, so talk to me. I mean, we're in a situation in Nigeria where we're seeing the challenge with cost of living crisis, and that, of course, is taking money away from consumer wallets. I'm just wondering, how has business been so far?
Well, the most important thing to tell you is that it's good news right now that Nigerians' mentality are changing. So, well, yeah, it's affecting us a little bit, but I want to tell you that that mentality is changing. People are actually seeking care to know what is going on in their body, knowing their number, knowing their number, you want to know what their blood pressure is, you want to know what their genotype is before they get married. All those little mistakes that we made before, we're really seeing that an upsurge in people wanting to know what is actually going in their body because they cannot afford to be sick.
Okay, so away from talking about health now, generally speaking, as someone who is investing in Nigeria, what are the biggest challenges you're facing? And then while the representative of the president was speaking, he highlighted some challenges, and it was interesting to hear him say that these challenges are also being taken care of. He talked about reforms, he talked about CNG, he talked about, so many things. So I wanted to combine two things here for me. The challenges you're facing, and has there been any reform of government, whether it is subsidy removal or whether it is floating of forex, that has sort of contributed to making sure that the business environment is better for you?
Well, in the area of power, like I told you, we were really struggling with diesel costs. But moving to this Band 8 thing has actually helped our business in such a way that we're able to reduce our diesel consumption. The electric bill went up a little bit, but it's kind of offset from about 1.6 million naira every month to about 300,000 naira now, both diesel and the electric bill. So those initiatives, maybe it's not the same for every other business, but for our business, that has been a plus. And to be honest with you, in the area of kidnapping and all that, we're not hearing more about that now. People will say because you are in Lagos. I do travel quite a bit by air and by road, and pretty much it's been safe when I do travel. And I don't travel with escort and all that. People will say, oh, we can afford that. But no. But don't travel when it's late. Don't travel when it's risky. When you know that the roads are going to be too empty, to go in convoy, travel with people, you will be able to find your level. Granted, the challenges are still there, and the government is doing whatever it takes to make sure that that gets taken care of. So it's a place to come and call home and to come and do business.
All right, that's interesting. I would like you to talk to us about maybe some things you would like the government to sort of work on. You've talked about how being on Band A has been able to save you over 700,000 naira per month, because initially you were spending a lot on diesel, but now you spend less because there is always electricity with Band A, and so you're not spending that much. But apart from that, are there other sectors you think the government needs to work on so that the business climate will become better? I mean, it's surprising to hear all of you diasporans say beautiful things, while when we talk to Nigerians, they are complaining. I mean, what's the difference?
Ability to see opportunities. What I would just like for government to do, if it's possible, we've done businesses and been invited by other countries like France, the Qatar and all that, is to work on what is called a soft landing. When you work on a soft landing by industry, then you're able to kind of attract people that want to come and invest their money here. But if you make it easy for them, soft landing, helping with incorporation, making their coming in back to Nigeria a little bit easier, I believe the government can come in that area and actually create a program that will address basic need of people that want to move back. And I believe if they do that, if they're able to provide that cushion, more people will be able to come to Nigeria to do business.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, there you have it. I guess you heard what he talked about. I don't know why, but these diasporans, they seem not to see the challenges that, Nigerian businesses are saying. Wow.
Well,
that's interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Perpetua Fagbemi Peter reporting live from the 7th Nigeria Diaspora Investment Summit. Thank you once again, Perpetua. Thank you for staying with us. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has pledged ongoing support for Sudan's military amid the country's ongoing conflict following a meeting with Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan late on Monday. In a statement, Egypt's presidency reported that Sisi called for immediate ceasefire in Sudan and urged efforts to protect Sudanese lives as the war between Burhan's forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, continues to devastate the nation. Sudan plunged into civil conflict in April last year, with Burhan's military locked in a power struggle against the RSF, led by his former deputy, Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. Longtime allies Burhan and Sisi discussed Egypt's commitment to assist Sudan at all levels, despite recent accusations from the RSF that Egyptian forces carried out airstrikes against them, claims Cairo has firmly denied. President Sisi reaffirmed Egypt's solidarity with Sudan in efforts to help the country emerge from its crisis. In the wake of an intense retributive campaign launched by the Rapid Support Forces in Central Sudan, hundreds of women and children are facing unimaginable conditions, according to a recent virtual press conference held by Strategic Initiative for Women in the Horn of Africa Foundation. Following the surrender of an RSF commander to the Sudanese Armed Forces on October 20th, RSF forces have reportedly unleashed devastating violence across Jazeera and Sina State, targeting civilians in harrowing spree of murder, torture, and mass sexual violence, primarily directed against women and girls. But the first Kwara Beach Volleyball Tournament is set for December 27th to 28th in Ilorin, Kwara State. Dare Kuti, Media Assistant to Nigeria Volleyball Federation President Engineer Musa Nimrod, announced that the event aims to promote the sport and discover new talents. The competition welcomes participants from military and paramilitary organizations, as well as students from tertiary institutions, fostering camaraderie among diverse groups. Key collaborations include the Kwara State Volleyball Association, Nigeria Volleyball Referees Association, and Kwara State, University of Ilorin, Kwara State Sports Commission, and the Ministry of Youth Development. Mario Balotelli featured in Serie A match for the first time in over 3 years and picked up a booking less than 5 minutes after his introduction as Genoa record a 1-0 victory over Parma on Monday evening. The former Italy international joined Genoa as a free agent, having left Turkish Super League side Adana Demirspor upon the expiry of his contract in June. Balotelli was introduced after 85 minutes, and it took less than 5 minutes for him to enter the book. He was cautioned after a foul 90 just after the clock struck 90. Technically, Balotelli has picked up a yellow and red card in his last 6 minutes of football, as his time with Adana Demirspor ended with a red card in his final appearance of the 2023-24 season. And that's all on the news. Let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Federal High Court dismisses treason charges against End Bad Governance protesters. Polls open as Americans cast votes in presidential election. President Sisi reaffirms Egypt's solidarity with Sudan amid ongoing conflicts. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.